about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck you little credit card scamming, jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis XIII, Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head, my road shop niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day prepping America overseas, pension for the workers, nigga please, embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement, I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut, foreclose a big holes out the tenement, I twist words like a speech impediment, I hope you got good credit bitch, if not better get a new job with benefits, while I play golf with niggas to get cheddar with, new money buys brand new carrots, my old money brought your great grandparents, you got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at you, I own every gold mine in South Africa. Thanks, baby, you made me $1 billion. Plus, I own a building for each one of my children's children.
Is that, you know, you almost will never find me siding with anything this government does. It's a corporate government of the United States, and I really don't side with even the. I don't side with you really side with the Iran deal because I think that it's kind of a lure, kind of a bait. But however, I side with the people who made the Iran deal more than the people, the contrary, the people that were against it in this country because. That was pretty much just saying we want to go to war with Iran now. I just think the nuke deal it won't happen now is what I'm seeing it because just knowing by history what happened with Iraq, there were similar things were being made with Saddam in 2002 and then in 2003 they invade. I think that Iran deal is not much different.
The only people against this deal are the warmongers or the misinformed. That's the bottom line of this.
Like I said, I'm not on the side of the people against it. I'm not on the side really the people, the mainstream people for it. I'm for it for a different reason. Is that a lot of people see that this is a permanent, that the government is actually trying to avoid war. Obama is trying to avoid war with Iran, but I know that the truth is that this is just a delay. An Iran deal because I know what happened with Iraq. Bush had similar deals made with Saddam about their chemical weapons and such. And then those three, they use these. The government has used these deals in the past as catch-22s. They have different stipulations that are very easily mendable. That they can say that it's very easy for the country to break, and then when they do break it, they justify war against. Like in Iraq, it was never actually broken. that the idea that Saddam never even had chemical weapons in 2002 or 2003. They had chemical weapons in the 80s, true, in the past when he gassed the Kurds, but that was when he was an American ally.
So we didn't care.
We didn't. It was practically, in fact, at the time, if anything, probably the United States talked about the gassing the Kurds. They probably made it seem like the Kurdish deserved it for having Iranian ties, because remember, at that time, Iraq and Iran were in a vicious war that Iraq initiated in the first place. Iraq invaded Iran in the early 80s, and then for a few years, it was a lot of casualties in the war. Over millions died, and the United States backed Saddam, and in fact, most of the West backed Saddam. Iran was kind of left on its own, and somehow still won the war. That's the miraculous thing. If there was really a winner in that war, it was a very ugly war that, there wasn't much territorial change either, but Iraq was pushed out of Iran, so I guess you could call it success on the Iranian forces. However, going back, it's funny, that I can already see the rhetoric that people are going to say that, they're going to start comparing the Ayatollahs, the leaders of Iran, to Saddam or whatever, which is funny because, they backed Saddam back in the 80s. The truth is that Saddam and Iran are a different situation. For one reason is that at one point, Iraq was an American ally. In fact, for about half of its history under Saddam, it was an American ally. You look at America's history with Iran, it's just been constant trying to deceive and take down Iran, because I think that Iran has always been against the bankers, has never really wanted to make deals with the devil. What I mean by that, deals with the banks in London, with the Federal Reserve. The people that run the Federal Reserve, those bankers, they don't. Iran has stuck to its principles ever since the revolution. So I think that's why they've been trying to go after Iran ever since. I mean, the Iranian hostage crisis, it was a bad thing. What happened, because a lot of those people were innocent that were taking the embassy, but not everybody was taking that embassy. That should be clarified. And also another thing is that there was a lot more fault on Jimmy Carter, than Jimmy Carter in D.C. than there was on the Iranian revolutionaries that had taken those people hostage, because it was simple. And I know that they don't like to negotiate with terrorists. However, they were violating, and it's not even terrorists, they were negotiating. What I'm saying is that's the common line. But, there was one simple thing that was being done by the United States government that was really a violation of international protocol, or international standards of human rights. When somebody that's been accused by a big percentage of his people of human rights violations, like the Shah of Iran was being accused of, if you harbor him, you're expected to take retaliation from it. And the United States never would fork over the Shah back to Iran, where he would go to court and likely face justice for what he had done. The Shah, there was no doubt that he had committed many human rights violations during his time, and he only was in power because the United States government put him in power in 1953, when the coup overthrew the democratically elected government that had replaced the Shah. They brought the Shah back to power, and the Shah reigned for 26 more years. And under that time, Iran suffered serious repression of the dissidents against the Shah. The main leader of the opposition was exiled to France, I believe, was where Khamenei was. And then when the Shah was deposed, Khamenei returned to Iran. And really, when you look at what's going on in the situation now, there's a lot of people in Iran that will say that the opposition is actually treated very fairly. They don't get killed. Their leaders aren't disappeared. Their leaders aren't forced to leave the country. They have open protest on the street. There's of course there is a little bit of I'll give one flaw to the Iranian government possibly is that that they're not really that secular. They are very Islamic tilted. However, it's the majority. It is a country where the majority of the people do want that. It's not like it's being imposed on a country doesn't want it. Plus, it's not like they're doing the horror. They're not doing horrors under the name of that religion. It's not like Saudi Arabia, for example, which is an American ally, that they're beheading people in the name of Islamic code. They're beheading people for petty crimes. Well, not petty crimes, but yeah, actually petty crimes, because I think drug usage, like smoking marijuana in Saudi Arabia, could get you beheaded. So stuff that, and also on your orientation, you can also get beheaded. Iran, that kind of stuff doesn't happen. So they sometimes try to paint Iran as if that's happening, and then they ignore what's happening in Saudi Arabia. Our media, it's just one of the many examples where our media has things backwards of what they really are. They try to show us Saudi Arabia as maybe a somewhat tolerant country, and Iran is the extremely backwards. Anyone that's not Muslim gets in trouble. But in all reality, when it comes to religion, when it comes to Christians and Jews, actually, they're treated equally. The only things I hear, and I don't know if that's really, that might be, again, propaganda from the West, is that atheists aren't exactly treated that well, or maybe just not treated with respect. Maybe the people inside of Iran, and who knows what kind of atheists live there. It's again, I guess you almost have to be there to know, because if it's the Tumblr atheist, that's saying that anyone that believes in religion is stupid, the militant atheist Charles Darwin is put into their, almost like a messiah to them. They talk about how a lack of religion, these militant atheists don't make atheism a religion. So I guess that would definitely, I wouldn't really blame them for not showing too much respect to people like that, or as if they're just people who mind their own matters, and then they're not getting treated with respect. That's a bit different story, as if they weren't bothering anybody with their lack of faith, but they're still being treated like shit. But I don't think that's really the case.
I agree. I agree there are militant atheists, but I don't know if it's fair to call Charles Darwin a militant atheist.
No, I'm as like a religious figure to them, or like they put these different people. They have their, they replace the religious figures instead of Jesus or Muhammad or something like that. They have their own people like Darwin that they always refer back to, and they put them at a high pedestal. Similar. I mean,
sorry, I was thinking of Richard Dawkins.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I had a brain.
They also have their people, and instead of like preachers, like, that are well known, like in Christianity or something, or any other religion, they have like comedians and stuff. That's mostly what atheists, they always, seems like all atheists, well, not all atheists, but all these militant atheists, they're always going back to Ricky Gervais, which he's all right, funny, but besides, I don't think his religious comedy is really that funny. I think he's funny for maybe for British comedy. British comedy has a little bit different taste than what I find funny. I mean, but then again, I find Andrew Dice Clay pretty funny, and that's completely different.
What would you classify as a militant atheist? Because depending on the answer, I might end up disagreeing.
I think what I'm talking about are the people that think that won't. They talk about religious people cramming their faith down their throats, and then they cram their lack of faith down people's throats way more. The people that are saying that anybody that has faith is stupid. They don't have any respect for. They just, most of their time is bashing other religions when they talk about how atheists are treated with a lack of respect, and they won't respect people that have a religion.
Well,
that's a militant.
Aren't atheists treated with a general lack of respect? I mean, there were recent polls out that stated that people would sooner elect a communist than an atheist. 60% of the country would not elect an atheist to the presidency.
I think that I don't know, but I don't know where that poll made in some country state that poll. I don't think that's really reflective of the country in general because it doesn't seem like that when I know that there's still this lack of respect towards atheists. I'm not saying that again. I say I'm not saying that atheists go without any people bashing them with any extent. There's some depends where you live, but I think that nowadays in modern times it just starting to seem like more atheist bashing of religious people than the other way around. I don't know. It's like I think that partially it's because I think partially it's because I think the religious people moderated themselves a little bit, and they're not as they're a little bit more peaceful than they used to be, towards and instead of trying to, back in the day, there wouldn't be the same story in the 50s towards atheists. So that's another thing that I find funny is that, they talk about this country will talk about how some Muslim country or whatever, some country is not treating atheists well or whatever. Or really, it seems like with a lot of groups, when it was just 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when they were not really being treated well here in the United States, and act like that's always been our history. It's been, treating everyone fairly when there's been a lot of groups that weren't treated fairly not very long ago. I mean, our parents, our grandparents remember the times when those groups, and they're not just religious groups, just insert whatever groups in their race, people of a certain orientation, whatever, in this country, and then now our media will use stuff like that. Like what I found funny was that when Obama went to those African countries and trying to use he was over there saying, "Oh, you guys are not treating gays very well," and it's like we've always treated gays well in the United States or whatever, kind of going down that line. We've always put them with equality or whatever, and they was also talking about the gay marriage thing like it happened years ago. This is literally a month after it happened. I'm just kind of laughing. It's like that's distortion of time the media does, or like they'll start talking about how a country doesn't treat a minority well or whatever, supposedly, and.
Time in the modern age, due to the internet, has been accelerated. If something is popular for 20 minutes, somehow it has longevity. So it's really the age of the internet, not really the media, that distorts time.
I think it's not really. I mean, it's the internet, but at the same time, it is the media has some effect of that because they
certainly.
Yeah, because it's the way how they portray stuff. They can, there's you literally look at how the media portray certain things that, and how they talk about it, and you could just by the way how you talk about something, you can make it seem like it was 5 years ago, like it really was, or you can make it seem like it was 25 years ago. Or the lack of how you talk about something could also make it seem like it was a lot longer than it really was. I mean, I think some of these, like for example, those again, it seems like this happens. Was talking about stuff that happened or stuff that happened in the 70s. A lot of there was all these turbulent events that were happening then, where we still had, again. This country will talk about how another country's not treating a minority well when we had rampant racism in both the people and the police and stuff. I mean, way worse than it even was today. Back in the 70s, where we had race riots and stuff, and then we had, court, and then they'll make they'll be like talk about Vietnam and it's like and the atrocities that happened in Vietnam, but they make it seem like it happened way back. It was only 40 years ago. People that served in that war are only 60 years old. It seems like I noticed that was wars. It's like World War II, Korea. They try to make it seem like that was 100+ years ago. My dad said even when he grew up, only 20, 30 years after World War II, people thought that was 80 years ago. It was that was before the internet. It's just how the media portrays things. They distort time and make the short time that all this stuff has happened seem like a lot more drawn out.
Yeah.
I think, I wanted to now talk about one major thing that is Syria today, because we have this has been escalating for 4 years now. You know, it seems like we might be. I know 2 years ago we thought we were at this bubble point, you know, where it's going to blow open. I think that, and I don't want to scare anybody, but it seems like with all the evidence I've seen, it's going to blow open pretty soon, because right now the United States is mostly lying about a Russian buildup in Syria of troops. It's true that the Russians have upped their efforts to help the Syrian government fight off the terrorists, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, and Islamic Front, the Free Syrian Army, all these, you know, a lot of these they call opposition groups in the United States, they call them the Syrian rebels, but I've mentioned many times how they are just terrorist groups that the United States funds against Bashar al-Assad. And Russia has helped Bashar al-Assad with more, I think now they're doing airstrikes against ISIS. The Russians are collaborating with Damascus. Remember, the United States phony anti-ISIS coalition, they do not collaborate with Damascus. The government that controls the affected country, where next to Iraq, is the most affected country by ISIS. And ISIS, you know, of course, there's been so much evidence coming from many different sources about how there's money was going to ISIS from D.C., you know, and they even admitted it at times on the media. There was a slip by Obama where he says we're speeding up the training of ISIL forces. And that's funny because, you know, because I know he was trying to say Syrian rebels is probably what he was going to say in there, but they are the Syrian rebels. They're the people that people think are the supposed freedom fighters fighting against the tyrannical Bashar al-Assad, which really misrepresentation of the truth, because most of the people, 70% of the country supports Bashar al-Assad, and it was very fair to every people in that country, all the minorities, the Kurds, the Christians. In fact, they're the Syrian army are the only ones that are fighting along with the Kurds against all their enemy forces, and their enemy forces include ISIS, the Syrian rebels, and the United States are striking for ISIS and the Syrian rebels. And wherever the United States government targets their strikes in Syria seems to be where ISIS makes gains. But they're getting pushed back. And that's why I think the United States is starting to really make it seem like it's serious. Because I've noticed that every time it seems like the rhetoric escalates when the Syrian rebels start to take major losses in the war. Like back in 2013, Bashar al-Assad almost had put the rebels to silence. You know, he almost had to. You know, there was almost a point where the war was almost over there, and then the rhetoric started about invasion. Then after they didn't invade, ISIS shows up, and ISIS starts spreading, you know, all throughout eastern Syria. And then last year the United States government says, "Oh, we're going to save Syria from ISIS," and then they start striking. But when they strike, the ISIS, if anything, advanced further into western Syria. But then the Syrian government made giant advances, and now they're pushing them further east, you know, sending them back towards Iraq. ISIS also has been spotted, injured soldiers in Israel. They're getting treated, and you know, there's training. There seems to be videos of ISIS being trained by Israeli, by Israeli special forces of some kind, probably Mossad. And why would they do all this? Why would they? You know, I think maybe I haven't mentioned again. There's more than really just the fact that Syria is a country that doesn't have a Rothschild-controlled central bank. It's not just that. There's a pipeline that they want to build that I believe it's going from Israel into Europe, and it would go through Syria. And, you know, the pipeline doesn't sound like much, but that is billions of dollars that they can make off of that. You know, so that's part of, it's all economic practically, you know. And the Rothschild bank that they're trying to put, the Rothschilds, even though they are already so rich at this point, just a pure greed, and that they want to put their brand of banking all throughout the world. And that's why they're right now Syria is being targeted. Syria is really held out. I mean, that's like Iran, they stayed true to being anti-New World Order. And in fact, most of the people in Syria, I think, know about the New World Order. they educate their people. They don't tell their students that's a conspiracy theory. They don't tell their young people that if you believe that these rich people are plotting the New World Order, you're crazy. In fact, that they know about the New World Order, and they're willing to fight it. That's what the Syrian soldiers are doing right now. By the way, Dylan, add CP Libre to the conversation. I see he's online with us, and
Yep. Hold on, I'm just gonna find him.
yeah, just let you do that. And CP Libre is back. He was off last week, but we have him back, and we're thinking back to
He's
Syria,
added. He's added. It's just
Yep.
calling him.
Thinking back to the series, though, it's like, I mean, I don't. It's like whenever we talk about the subject, though, it seems like it seems like it's bound to have a little, what I might be saying about how it's going to blow open soon might be considered fear mongering, but I just don't see how it couldn't, because Israel had been threatening to invade into Syria. The United States seems to be calling for an invasion now, so it really doesn't seem likely that. And this is the second time.
Sorry.
Yeah, here, CP Libre is in the conversation, but it doesn't seem likely that this time we're going to go unscathed. CP Libre.
I'm of the opinion that Assad will stand his ground for a little while longer. I don't think we're going to see him go down for a while.
I don't think I'm an optimist, and I don't think he's going to go down anytime soon either. I don't see him resigning. I don't see him getting overthrown. And I think even if the country's invaded, I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to Gaddafi's fate is going to happen to Assad. Gaddafi stuck it up for a long time, but it's not like he cowered away. But Tripoli did get invaded, and he had no choice, and he went back to his hometown, the Sirte. And when he ran the Sirte, eventually they found him. I don't think Assad's ever going to do that.
No, I think Assad's going to go down fighting, but I don't think we're going to see him go down for a while. I think he's going to be the last bastion of stability in that region.
Well, I think that Assad will go down if he ever does go down. It'd be around the same time Iran goes down, because if one of those goes down, they're both going down together. They're sticking together. Iran and Syria is a permanent alliance.
I mean,
that's existed since the 70s.
Yeah, but now the Russians have joined the party now, so...
Well, it's not like they're joined the party. It's just that they're now making good on their alliance that they've had since, the 70s. The Soviet Union was pretty good friends with his father, and then, Putin has made pretty good friends with his son, and there was a military base from a Russian military base is in Syria. They're pretty close allies, and they're pretty close to each other, actually. If you look at the map, I mean, Syria's just a few hundred miles practically south of Russia's southern borders. And Syria is a very, Putin knows that if Syria falls, it's going to become another Western proxy like Saudi Arabia, and it probably will look the same as Saudi Arabia. What's this?
Unfortunately, you're right.
CP Libre, can you hear us? I see you're in the conversation, but you haven't said anything yet.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm listening to you.
Yay! Yeah. So we're talking about Syria right now, and we're in this general Middle Eastern show. But Syria, we're talking about because right now there's been a lot of rhetoric about him on the media. Talking about United States media has been trying to paint out like Russia has made an illegal intervention into their country. It is true that there's been some escalation of.
I think that's what media is trying to tell you to believe, but that's not illegal. That's a kind of internationalism support.
Well, yeah, it's just it's true. There's been an escalation, and like I said, they're making good on their alliances. What's happening? They're not going to let they're not going to let this go any further. ISIS tearing up cities, and I think what they're worried about is what I've seen from the war map is that ISIS is around Damascus, They have been pushed further east, but there seems to be a very steady offensive going west, and then separate from the rest of the pack that's getting pushed east. So I think that Russia is trying to prevent any possibility of a incursion into Damascus. That's why they're coordinating with the Syrian troops, but they're not intervening. They're trying to make it seem like Russia has tons of soldiers on the ground right now in Syria, which is not true.
No, it's kind of preventive support. It's the same. Why is media trying to treat this as a scandal? Why don't they say the same in the border of Venezuela and Colombia? They're treating the news the way they think they're convenient to the public opinion. But
well, again, like I said, the Russian airstrikes. Yeah, they're milking this cow. This cow that's being over exaggerated to, and what they're doing is that they're trying to get as much out of it. They're trying to get as much fear of the American people, because now people are thinking it's like I could think of some of the American people. They're probably like, oh, we gotta stop them Ruskies from taking Syria. It's going to be permanently a communist dictatorship if we let the Ruskies take Syria. We got to bring them some good old American democracy like we did to Libya.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the same. They're trying to do the same they did in Libya, but I think the people is more aware now that when the coup of Gaddafi happened.
It was, and it's the sad thing is that it's going down the same route. I don't think it's going to end up with the same result, but it's scary because the same thing happened in Libya. These rebels, in quotations, these freedom fighters, these democracy heroes, that were truly terrorists, belonged to Al Qaeda and and now ISIS is running rampant in that country, Libya. All these Islamists, started fighting against Gaddafi after, and was still, and again, like Syria, Gaddafi had majority supported Gaddafi in Libya, like the majority supports Assad in Syria. However, in Libya, eventually, these people that are getting a ton of help from the West were, and also there was a bombing from the West that pushed it, enabled these rebels to take over the country. And now you look at what happened in Libya. Libya is a hellhole. There people are getting, on the same beaches where people used to party and people used to go on vacation to. These beautiful resort towns, are now decimated dens of terrorists. There's people, like I said, there was those Christians, the Coptic Christians that were beheaded, 20 of them on a Libyan beach. There was ISIS is now running rampant in that country. In the same city that Gaddafi, Sirte is where Gaddafi was from, ISIS occupies nowadays. That's what's going to happen in Syria if Assad falls. I don't think Assad's going to fall. I mean, Gaddafi got into an unfortunate trap. That there was literally like a chase down of Gaddafi when he died. I think Assad would be a little bit different. If he ever went down, it's going to be like Allende, and a little bit different from Allende. He's not going to surrender. Allende eventually surrendered to the horrible pressure, but Assad, he's going to be out there with an AK-47 shooting those terrorists himself if it comes down to it. Assad's a tough guy. Assad is he doesn't care. He doesn't care what people think of what he says. He doesn't care about. He doesn't care what the West has to care about. About the image that he gets in the West. He does care about what his people think, and that's why he did such a good job so far as leader, improving their lives. And his father too. His father made so many social programs for those people, brought Syria from a, very primitive third world country that was back before the party took over in '63. When the party took over in '63 that country might as well have been back in 1900, and now they went into Syria, until the war, was more modern than any country in the Middle East practically. Besides maybe the Qatar or Abu Dhabi, well, Abu Dhabi is in the United Arab Emirates, but the Emirates and Qatar and the Emirates would suck if you're not a rich person, because that's the untold story, is that those countries are 1% rich people, 99% very poor workers that make those rich people have the luxurious lives that they have.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
that's corporatism, though. That's how it works.
Yeah, and we have to be clear in one point. This inner conflict is being promoted by the West. Well, they have been planting these groups, these terrorist groups, to fight the real power in these countries. For example, Assad, he represents the people in Syria. The Daesh and the jihadists. They don't represent the truth of Muslim people in Syria. I mean, maybe I don't know the word. It's Sinais or Shiites. We must be clear also in this point. The Muslims are divided into ideological groups, and Assad represents the majority of the group that Shiites in Syria. So the U.S. have been developing an inner conflict in order to make the world believe that the whole people of Syria don't want this Assad, this government of Assad as the one representing everybody.
Well, he doesn't even just represent all Muslims in Syria. He represents anybody really that's of any different religions. Christians. I mean, the Christians are very overwhelming majority. The overwhelming majority of Christians that live in Syria support Assad.
Yeah, that was my point.
Yeah, and also, people a lot of people in the West try to point out, well, Assad's a Shia, he's an Alawite. Alawite's part of it. It's a Shia group. It's a Shia sect or whatever. It's inside of the Shia part of Islam. They say he's a minority and he's ruling over a country that's a Sunni majority, but his army is 90% Sunni. There's a very there's a very united connection between the Shias and the Sunnis in Syria, and yes, a lot of the people that are fighting him are Sunni, but I'm pretty convinced that a lot of the people that are fighting him are not. They're acting Muslim. They're pretending to be of the Islamic faith, but they don't have really a religion. They're the religion of the Zionists. They're handlers, and the puppet masters that give them their arms and money. For example, ISIS. ISIS. Yeah. Yes, I think that some of them are devoted to. They actually think that they're carrying out the mission of Allah or whatever. But I think a lot of them are. They're pretty much just actors, and they're coming from Western countries, because one of the people that actually survived captivity in ISIS said that he didn't see a Quran anywhere. People are supposed to be so devoted to Islam, don't have a Quran anywhere. I mean, my family's not even that devoted to Christianity, and I mean, only one of us is really follows Christianity to a big extent, and that would be my mom. And there's 2 Bibles in this house, one in English and one in Spanish. Yeah. You're telling me that people that fight and kill people for their religion, what they think is the right of their religion, don't have a book of their religion anywhere. He didn't see a Quran anywhere. The guy, and also, these people that are just in the Syrian rebel groups and stuff. I mean, they've almost been proven to be paid mercenaries. There is no ideological reasons they're fighting. It's purely just for money at this point. That they're fighting because their master said so. Those masters, are the governments in the West that work for the Rothschilds. That the Rothschilds want to take over Syria. And they want to put there. It's one of the last holdouts besides Iran. And right now, Yemen's kind of like a disputed right now because the government in Yemen hasn't been really able to erase any of the financial controls the Rothschilds had under the pro-American government that they had for many years, the Houthis, because of as soon as they took power earlier this year, they've been bombarded by Islamist and pro-American forces. The Houthis are, they're practically by ideology. Like, talk about they're against the New World Order, they're against Zionism, they're against Washington D.C., and they're strong allies of Syria and Iran. But Yemen hasn't, Yemen's interesting though. Like CP and Dylan, I don't know how much you guys have seen about this. That Saudis are doing these unspeakable crimes. Children are getting killed. Children are getting killed by their bombs that the Saudis are dropping on Yemen. The Saudis have invaded Yemen. It's not talked about in the Western media. It's been going on for months. It's only been mentioned a few times, I see. And they were mentioning it when it first happened back in March, when the Saudis invaded Yemen. But they acted like it ended. It hasn't ended.
Yemen, much like Somalia, has become a chess piece. And it's all to destabilize Syria in the end. I mean, creating destabilization around the region to allow groups like ISIS and al-Nusra to gain a little bit of power. It will help to destabilize Assad in the end. This is all towards the destabilization of Assad and eventually the Ayatollah.
Well, yeah. The Ayatollah and Assad, they again, it's a strong alliance that's existed for decades, and I think that this Yemen, they don't want them to have another ally. They don't want to become a trifecta. The Houthis, I don't know what's the leader's name.
I could look it up real quick.
Yeah, look it up. I know I've seen his name before. Like, it's just not coming to me at the second. Like I know it if I heard it.
The Houthis. Let's see. Their leader is Abdul Malik al-Houthi. Al-Houthi.
Oh, it's literally al-Houthi. Yeah. Well, like I said, is that would be they don't want a third anti-Western leader in the region that could actually bring more stability to the region. And Yemen being so close to Saudi Arabia, and also Syria is pretty close to Saudi Arabia on the north side, and Iran is right over to the east of Saudi Arabia. All you would need now at that point is some country over in Africa, maybe.
Libya's been destabilized recently again, so it's not too far-fetched that a Libyan leader who was against us came to power. It's not totally unlikely.
I mean, against the United States government. I mean, I don't think. Well, that's the funny thing is that a lot of people think that these leaders like Assad and when they scream all this rhetoric about against the United States, usually they even specify the government. And a lot of times they've specified not the people. They don't have a problem with people like you and me. In fact, they would like what we are doing, and we're actually telling the truth. And then we're an example of why they don't hate all Americans, because there's people like us in the American crowd. They know there's people that are very against their people that are trying to bring harm and bring violence to their countries, in the United States like us. And I think.
I don't know if I like Assad as a leader, but I think Assad is a good bastion of stability, much as Saddam was. I think Saddam was Saddam was an okay leader. He was perfectly secular, but he had some other problems. But he was a great bastion of stability in the region.
I think there's a difference between Assad and Saddam, because Assad and his father did a lot of good things for the Syrian people, developing that country and the people, bringing unity to the country and being fair leader too. That country didn't have that much of a problem with poverty prior to this war. Didn't have much problem with societal inequalities such as race and stuff like that. Saddam,
but at the same time,
Iraq was a bit different, though. I'm saying is that Saddam's Iraq, there was problems such as Shia were the spies in Iraq. even though, or not Shia, the Kurds were despised, which were a Shia sect, and those,
Yeah.
and Saddam was a Sunni leader
Yes.
that imposed Sunni superiority over the Shia majority country.
But he was a fairly secular leader for the time. I mean, the guy they have in there now is not secular in the least, and he will probably, if he stays the leader, he will probably eventually destabilize Iraq, kick out the Kurds or something like that. Maybe kick out the Sunnis that they took out of power. Because if I'm not mistaken, the new leader is Shia, correct?
Yeah. The new government is Shia, and they are they're not exactly religiously secular. They're not religiously secular in the fact that they have they put a little bit, but neither was Saddam. I think that really, when you look at it, they haven't really changed much. It just flipped. The Shia are the majority of the country, though, so I guess it's a little bit of an upgrade considering it's not a minority. I don't know. It's really just the same stuff. But now, I think, though, what's weird is that the United States is starting to change their tone towards the Iraqi government, because the Iraqi government seems to be legitimately wanting to fight ISIS, unlike the American government. And because the Iraqi government wants to legitimately fight ISIS and wants to collaborate, and they have been collaborating with Iran, the United States government's not very happy with it. And I think that's why the United States government really wants to do another regime change in Baghdad, and this time it's going to be, probably some ISIS or an ISIS ally is probably going to take over Baghdad, and it's going to make Iraq another Saudi Arabia. Because if you want to see what these Syrian rebels, or the people that are friends with the Syrian rebels, turn countries into if they take power, just look at Saudi Arabia. That's the result.
Yeah, that's a
Syria-
good point, because the government of Saudi Arabia is a kind of totalitarian government, and that's what they're trying to impose on all of the region, on the Middle East. And we must recognize that there are several kinds of government in this part of the world. This is not, for example, this is not a kind of republics. This is a very complex way of government, and we must respect their right to develop this kind of government.
Well, I was saying that the one that they haven't, it's Syria. If you think about the complex, it's kind of complex. How they made it's not exactly. Weird thing is that, really, actually, Assad, a little unknown fact is he actually is a socialist. He's a socialist leader, but it's not in the same kind of socialism as necessarily the Russians or other socialist countries that you see. It's a unique Arab version. It's been, by Arabized, it's been more fitted to the culture, and also the ways that they. But what has happened, though, is a lot of the same results that you saw, for example, in Venezuela. The poor have been helped tremendously in the last 40 years in Syria. There's been a lot of social programs that have now modernized the country, modernized the average person, and brought them out of poverty. This Syria was, like I said, a primitive, poor country back in the 1950s and 60s. And it was, by primitive, I mean it looked like what the United States looked like in 1900 or something like that. And then now Syria looks more modern than until the war. Damascus looked more modern than a lot of American cities.
Yeah.
I think that that's the thing about the Middle East, is that it's so complex between the version that the United States tells them and the version that we tell. What I mean by we, the people that actually have done the research and talking on here on the radio, and just all this. There's so many links and different groups, and it's one of the most It is the most confusing region to talk about, because there's just so much information. and so many governments have went through that place. Like we're talking about Iraq, they might be on their third different government they've had in the last 15 years. If what I think could happen, we talk about. I don't think Assad's going to fall anytime to the terrorists in Syria, but I am worried about Baghdad. I think that Baghdad could fall and become ISIS territory because ISIS has a lot of Iraq. They don't have much of Syria when you look at the maps. I mean, Assad has done a really good job this year in pushing them back, and I think that's why the United States wants to invade now, because when their proxies start losing, then they step in themselves, and then Libya, that didn't happen. Syria is different because their forces are stronger than the Libyan army was. So the Syrian army can fight off America's little proxies. Now, the United States Army, that'd be pretty difficult for them, but I think it's going to come down to that. I think the United States military is going to invade this year. I know it's a drastic prediction considering that we only have 3 months of this year left, but I think it's going to happen this year, and it's not going to come with much warning either. It's going to be it's not going to be a war declared. It's not going to go through Congress or any of that stuff. They're just going to be, they're going to say airstrikes, boots on the ground. They've already been doing airstrikes, but airstrikes escalated, boots on the ground right now. Big numbers. We're going to send 20,000 next week. We officially are in a conflict with Syria, because remember, not some of our most ugliest wars that the United States has gotten themselves involved with were not wars technically by declaration by Congress. For example, I don't think neither Korea or Vietnam, actually Vietnam was, but Korea was never a war. I don't think Congress ever declared war officially against North Korea. But they went in there, like I said, how they will with Syria most likely, and they just called it a conflict. And then all that other, then it looks, it's technically completely legal, even though everything that in a war will happen. There's nothing, it's just literally a title is all that's missing. That's all you can't do without Congress. Now, Congress is all supportive of the war in Syria and Iran. They're all bought off. What are we even talking about? So they, even if it went down to a vote in Congress, they're going to pass it. And the difference is that 2 years ago, I think the American people were a lot more against the war in Syria. But now, how the media spun it, Americans are fearful. Americans are fearful of the Russians getting more power they think they're going to take over Syria. They also think that they believe themselves that taking out the primary enemy of ISIS is the only way to defeat ISIS, and they don't know about how their own government is funding ISIS, and ISIS wouldn't be a thing if our government hadn't funded ISIS against Assad. So, and that was this Russian takeover talk. It's got people in this fearful, state, and that's all it really takes to get people to support war. I mean, look how Nazi Germany did it. Got people all fearful. People start making, people start having a whole different mindset than when they're thinking rationally. When people are scared, their mindset changes. And what I mean by that is that now they want the big voice of authority. They tell, okay, we're going to have to do this and this and this, but it's all going to be okay in the long run or whatever, but we have to bomb this country. Same shit happened in Nazi Germany. I swear there was a fucking playbook somewhere that the Germans had and gave it when they not really lost the war but relocated. They took it with them to D.C. where a lot of those Nazis came to the United States, and now they're using it to this day on the same ways how to turn regular people into fascists. A lot of these regular people in this country don't realize it, but they're fascist supporters. I want to put out the call. We're an hour into the show almost. Put in the call-in number. Our phones were working last time. 718-717-8296. 718-717-8296. The phone should be working today since they were working last week. I know we talked about Syria almost the first half of the show. We mentioned Yemen a little bit. I want to ask CP Libre something because he, I think I saw on your Facebook you were talking about It's kind of minor compared to what we were talking about, but I just want to ask your opinion. What do you think about that incident where those Mexican tourists were killed in Egypt this week? I think it was this week, or they were mistaken for terrorists. The two people on vacation. I think that.
Well, this is
I don't know.
an awful news I got in the week, but I think that the position of the government of Mexico should be more diplomatic, because we must understand that the conflict, the region of the earth is happening. Okay, so I heard some minister of Mexico who said that we should declare war on Egypt. That's fucking insane. What? Yeah. I think that's not that.
Well, but no, I have mixed feelings towards Abdel Fattah, or whatever his full name, but El Sisi. El Sisi, the current president of Egypt. I have mixed feelings on him because, I think that he's done. Sometimes he seems to be kissing Israel's ass. At other times, he doesn't seem to be too friendly with Israel. He seems to be changing his opinion. I don't know what exactly he's doing. Flip flopping. I wish he would just have one firm stance so I could know what he was about. I know, and I don't see how you could be a legitimate anti-Zionist when you're when some days you're working with them to flood out their tunnels of the Palestinians that are running away from Israel, and the Egyptians are flooding their tunnels. And other days you're talking about how the Israelis are being too violent. I don't get how that's exactly going to work. Now the Egyptians do use the excuse that, well, there's terrorists coming through those tunnels that are attacking Egypt. Egypt has in the Sinai Peninsula, they claim to have a bad problem with Palestinian terrorists. At the same time, they do claim to have a problem with ISIS. I think ISIS is in the Sinai, probably. That's probably true, considering that they're in Libya, and the Egyptians did airstrikes against the ISIS in Libya, and which the United States government, surprisingly, or not so surprisingly, depending on how aware of their true stance about ISIS, the United States government condemned what Egypt did, because I guess they said because they didn't collaborate with the United States first. Don't think that was the case. I think they were just mad because ISIS is fighting pro-Gaddafi militants that are in Libya. Like Dylan was bringing up earlier, the Gaddafi movement it's not really over in Libya. The people that are fighting against the United States government, it's not over, and the Gaddafists are still there. So I think that
us among the people of Libya. That's the reason U.S. planted these ISIS on their territory.
Yeah.
604, you're on the line.
Nice.
What's that? I'm gonna mute my sound here.
Well, you're live. I mean, we can hear you.
You hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah. So we're talking about many things here. We're talking about Libya, Syria,
He's
all
gone.
kinds of stuff, and I lost him.
Yeah.
No, it was. I had him. Yeah, we lost him. Man. So we have a good thing. At least we do have the call lines. That confirms that we have our lines up today. So it's not that. But yeah. So I was gonna say though, I think that I think Egypt is a really weird scenario that I can't even. I haven't even. I think that what might be the or I think it's very likely or very probable. Is what happened in Egypt is I think they just keep going through pro-American governments that each one pretends to be the one that's not going to be, that's going to give the Egyptian people what they want, and a Nasser-style leftist government. What I mean by that is like Nasser and his Nasserist socialism that he brought to the country was similar to what Assad was later, but he was actually right there with Tito at the beginning of it was the people that they were supportive of socialism, but they were not supportive necessarily of how the Soviet Union were doing things. They made their own
little pact. And Nasser was one of the first people there, and he did a lot of good things for Egypt, and he was staunchly anti-Zionist. That's part of the things that the Egyptians want. Being right next to the Zionist criminal state, the Egyptians want a leader that's going to say no to the Zionists. And Nasser told them, that Israel will never see peace because they left black and they came back white. These people are European invaders. They're still European invaders. They're not
Egypt is a very bizarre case.
Yeah, Israel is very complicated too, and they mask, criticism against them with a simple word, anti-Semitism. The funny thing is they're not even Semitic, most of them. Semitic would be the people in Palestine that are Muslim. So really, the Israeli government, if you want to go to the literal definition of the word they keep using, the Israeli government are the anti-Semitic people, because they're the ones that are killing Semitic people. There are some Semitics that live in Israel, but a lot more live in Palestine, and most of those are Europeans. And, and the criticism against Israel is not anti-Jewish, because a lot of Jewish people, are supportive of the Palestinian cause.
But there is legitimate anti-Semitism even amongst people in this movement. I think we can both agree on that.
Yeah, I mean, you can recognize it when it happens. I don't think it's that common, but I've seen it. I mean, people that really do believe that the Jews need to be done away with. If you believe that they need to be done away with, that's obvious, and some of the people are like that. This truth movement, unfortunately. I don't think that that is really just counterproductive to our cause, and people they use that against us. And our cause is people think that with all the other stuff we're called tinfoil hatters, or internet warriors or whatever, all this stuff that they call us. Now we're Nazis as well. The people that are very staunchly anti-fascist like us are not going to be called Nazi because of the little rotten apples in the group. But I think that again, but a lot more are being falsely accused of it. We'd be, by many crowds, we'd be falsely how we talk about Israel. We'd be accused of it. I've probably been accused of it a few times. I'm pretty sure that. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a specific case where I was accused of it. But it must have happened, but because a lot of these accusations that people send against me, they just kind of blur together unless they're hilarious. Then when they're hilarious, those stick out. Like I don't know. Well, some of the I think at one time, people start saying. I think I've literally been accused of working for Russia or something like that. I think that happened one time actually, and then I played along with it into it. I think I was like, oh yeah, I make a ton of money working for the FSB. Long live Russia, from Comrade Chris Jackson or something like that. And I was just like, whatever.
I was accused of working for the government. Yeah, they'd hire a 16-year-old.
It's a 21 Jump Street program.
Obviously.
If it is a 21 Jump Street, I'm just saying you're gonna be Jonah. You'll be Jonah Hill. I'm a smarter Channing Tatum. I don't know what CP.
I hope I'm a smarter Jonah Hill.
I don't know where CP Libre fits into there. Let's say he could be. I don't know. He could be the there's not really a third character in that shit. I was like thinking this is Superbad for a second. I got those movies confused, and then he could be like the one guy, Fogel.
They're making another one. So they 23? Might. Yeah, so they might introduce a third character in that.
Yeah, we got a little bit off topic, but yeah. Also, we went from talking about Libya, and then all of a sudden we're talking about funny drug movies.
You're talking to a bunch of teenagers. What do you want? What do you want from me?
It's bound to happen. It's bound to happen. We have two people that are teenagers on this show, and
And one of them is a big movie buff. So
I know you are a big movie buff. I've seen on your page. I again, one of the downsides of being an activist is that you start looking all these actors up, and that's why I couldn't call myself a movie buff, because there's only a few actors I actually like it, because I see what they talk about politically. For example, like Seth Rogen or whatever. He's not only a Zionist, he's like scary Zionist, meaning like he laughs at. I've heard that he was like pretty much laughs at like Palestinians getting killed and stuff like that.
I would be surprised at that. I would be. And the other thing I have to do, I have a rule. I separate the actor from the role. It's like separating the painter from the painting, or the author from the book.
Yeah. It gets hard though when you know everybody, you know people too well in depth. Separating the role from who they are.
Plus, it's not like the money's going to the actor. The actor is lucky to make $15,000 unless you're a Seth Rogen. He's still going to get paid whether you go see the movie.
True. That's the thing, but it's hard to enjoy the movie knowing all that behind the scene. Seth Rogen's gonna be rich whether you watch. When the interview came out, I was kind of mad about it, and I was just like, yeah, boycott the interview. But I'm like, what are we gonna really do? There's gonna be like 5 people that are gonna follow me, and there's gonna be he's gonna make $35 less on the millions he's gonna make on that movie, even though it wasn't released in the theaters. He still made probably.
I still watched it.
I watched it then.
It wasn't good, but it was as good as I expected it to be.
The only the funny part was there was a couple funny parts, like the James Franco when the agents come to the door and he's talking about what happened the night before. I got stank dick, screaming that, and the agent's just all confused. I was watching and my parents were still awake. I'm like, holy shit. And I had that like on 20 volumes, so it was all loud throughout the house. James Franco screaming that. I'm like, oh shit. CP Libre. So, I was like, I wonder, in Mexico, and I know because I was like thinking, it's like, if you talk about Israel people and start talking the way we do, start talking about the criminal state of Israel and what they do to the Palestinians and all in the wars that they've started in the Middle East and just the false flags and all that, what would happen? I mean, are the people in Mexico just as defensive of Israel, as they are in the United States down there in Mexico? I know that they're. No, I'd actually would expect something similar, because I think in Colombia the same thing would happen in the United States. So I bet Mexico's the same.
Yeah, they're an example for the resistance. I mean, Israel has been accomplishing their role in this awful movie, because they have been taking this.
Well, I was asking though, like, what Mexico? If you talk about Israel, Mexico, badly, are people going to start saying that all the stuff they're going to say in the United States? You're anti-Semitic, you're anti-Jewish, you're a Nazi, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we have that problem here in Mexico. That concept of anti-Semitism is not widely known by the people. They just discuss about these crimes committed by Israel in Gaza, and they know they have been the victims, the Palestinians. They are aware about this situation.
It's bad.
The problem.
It's bad here in the United States.
It's more deep inside your culture than in the Mexican one.
Well, like I'm saying, is that in the United States, like, if you start talking about it, especially like in Florida, because I think in Florida, again, it's bad what happens here, because they have all these people are influencing the people to be pro-Zionist in Florida. You know, you have all the politicians of Florida are very staunchly pro-Zionist. You know, all the churches are going to be practically pro-Zionist. And then if a church actually becomes anti-Zionist, then the people start questioning the church rather than the government for giving them the phony information. Like, I wonder how many people jumped ship when the Presbyterians became anti-Zionist recently. I bet a ton left because of that. You know, because finally they became the church in the United States to step away from all that Christian Zionist rhetoric that backfires against Christians, because supporting Israel is supporting a country that kills Christians in Palestine. There's a lot of Christians that live in Palestine. All across the United States, though. I mean, they're going to say the same things about if you start criticizing Israel, and that's because they have a giant lobby. You know, they've ingrained that through many different ways, that criticism of Israel is racist. Criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. They have AIPAC is the biggest lobby in the United States, bigger than the NRA. It's bigger than any lobby for, way bigger than probably any lobby for better education. I bet that. But the AIPAC is just this tremendous lobby. And I think there's a bit difference between that and like Mexico, because I don't think they have quite that established. I mean, every presidential candidate between now and 2016, that's a challenge. I want to see people take. Is everybody just look around? There's going to be some point where if you still support one of these candidates for presidency, at one point they're going to go to AIPAC, bow down to Israel, and support war in Iran. Obama did it. Hillary Clinton did it. They all do it at some point, and if they don't, they say pro-Israel stuff other ways. Obama bowed down to AIPAC when he did that before his 2008 run. There was actually a lot of signs that he was not a man of change whatsoever. And the funny thing is that people think that Obama's actually legitimately anti-Israel. Like, that'd be a bad thing if that was actually true. He's not legitimately anti-Israel. He's actually been one of the most pro-Zionists by the amount of money that's went to Israel during his administration, and the amount of stuff that the government has done for Israel during his administration. It's been one of the most Zionist presidencies. It would be nice, actually, if we had like the JFK presidency, where they were suspicious of Israel. They thought they were building nuclear weapons, and they went to investigate. Our government had actually, but our government, that was JFK. That's a whole different thing. Yeah. JFK was he was actually against the bankers, and you saw what happened. And that's another thing. If any of your candidates, if you actually believe they're against the bankers and they actually somehow win the election, if they don't get shot in 2 or 3 years, or they weren't against the bankers in reality, because JFK was against the bankers. He got shot. A lot of these leaders that you see around the world that got killed by rebels or whatever, like Gaddafi, he was against the bankers, and they killed him in a brutal fashion. The rebels. I mean, they put the video of him being tortured on the internet. Not many anti-banker leaders get to live. I don't think one could live in the United States. If it happened, there's no way, really, that one could come through the electoral system. An anti-banker leader could only come by revolution, whether non-violent or very most likely violent. Just face reality that a non-violent revolution is pretty hard when your country, when you have the most militarized nation on the planet and is not afraid one bit to use it on its own people. It will use it in a second again in foreign, use it in a second domestically. So I think that if a revolution ever came in this country, it would be non-violent, or not. It would not be non-violent. It would be violent.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's Mexico. I want to ask one. It's one off our topic from the Middle East. But when do you think that a true step towards
Well, not here with Dylan or CP Libre for a second. I don't know if we disconnected there. It's just me. I guess Dylan's going to set up a call between all of us here in a second, and then we're going to disconnect for a short time, and then we'll be back here in a moment. I don't know what the disconnection was about. That's it. Well, it seems. I think they're. I'm getting a word from CP Libre. This isn't working. Let me just message him. But anyways, I was going to ask. Just to make sure everybody still doesn't lose track of what was going on. I was about to ask CP Libre about the situation in Mexico for a second, just because I was, curious. And Dylan just gave me the thumbs up that. Anyway, that was CP Libre. I don't know. So there's a little bit of confusion here back here in the studio. I was going to ask CP Libre about the situation about the revolution in Mexico, since I was a bit curious, even though it's not about our Middle East topic. I guess we got down that track because of the Egypt. The situation happened in Egypt. I wanted to mention is that if Libya becomes pro-Qaddafiist, Yemen wins, the Houthis win their war, which they are already the ones in the government. They just need to fight off the pro-American Islamist forces on the south, the Syrians to the north, and then the Iranians to the east. Saudi Arabia in Israel would be surrounded by four ways, practically, or by anti-New World Order countries. That would be massive. And I think that's why, and it's not like it's a hypothetical. Yemen's already already an anti-New World Order government by the fact that the Houthis are in charge. Now they just need a little bit more stability, then they can actually start making serious, financial changes. Right now, the country is completely disputed, meaning that, what I mean by that, it's like literally 50% of the country is loyal to the Hadi government and 50% to the Houthi government. But the capital, Sana'a, is controlled by the Houthis. Syria is not, even though it's in a civil war, it's a lot more stable than the Yemen situation. Assad is the leader of Syria, and most of the people consider Assad the leader of Syria. Iran's completely stable. In Libya, yes, the Qaddafiists are on the outside looking in, but they're gaining a lot more support this year. And people have lost faith in the Muslim Brotherhood, who have been trying to take over the country. That's one of the rivaling governments trying to take over Libya. And then there's the Libyan, the one that took over after Gaddafi fell, and they are supported by United Arab Emirates and Egypt, I think. So they're not exactly left-leaning or anything. So what I mean by that is that there's only true revolutionary side in the war is the Qaddafists. And then, of course, there's all these Islamists that are kind of I think that a lot of them have fought alongside of the other sides of the war because they're effectively, they're probably effectively fighting for the transitional government and the Muslim Brotherhood. The transitional government's the one that took over after Gaddafi fell, and then there's the Muslim Brotherhood, the same ones I'm talking about in Egypt. When we talk about Egypt, Muslim Brotherhood, pro-American group, Islamist, that took over during Mohammed Morsi, and then there's the Qaddafi. The Qaddafiists are fighting ISIS in Libya, and I think that in a few years they could win the civil war. I don't, even though that they don't have much territory, I think that they could eventually, they are gaining a lot of support. They could very quickly become the most supported movement in Libya, and then they could gain a lot more territory, and then you could see, there's still, now there's Saif al-Islam Gaddafi that I don't think he's exactly the best fit, considering that he wasn't exactly the most loyal of Gaddafi's sons. I think Hannibal, even though that he doesn't have political experience too much, he was the head of a Libyan government group. He was the head of the maritime administration in Libya under his father.
You know, I don't think that necessarily need to be, you know, like what his other son was considered almost like the prime minister of Libya. I don't think you need that kind of political experience to be the leader. You know, I think that Hannibal has a lot of leadership qualities, and you know, he's more. I don't know. And he's also younger too. I think so. You know, maybe not by much, but he does look. He does seem to look significantly younger. He's vibrant. Gaddafi was vibrant to the end. He was aging. You know, I think that's bringing back some of the energy in Hannibal could be an option for Libya down the road. Anyways, let's see. No word from Dylan. I'm going to message him here again. I think it might be a freeze up might have happened. It's very common here in the studio. We get a freeze up and then we can't, you know, then the Skype doesn't work for the person hosting the call. And then, you know, I'm the only one that can be in the call because I can't conference call. But, you know, I got an idea. I'm not going to go through it. That might cause too much trouble. I've never had CP Libre ever conference calls in, and I don't want to go through a mess right now. Unfortunately, I don't think since the phones are not lined to me or what. Actually, there's no way I can accept the call. So there's no callers so right now, no callers can come in. Just saying. Hopefully, in a few minutes here, we're gonna get Dylan's gonna take back over the studio, and then we're gonna be back to our normal operations. I think that you know, as North Africa is interesting, but you know, it's tragic what's happened. They went from these revolutionary governments. The revolutionary governments used to be in charge of Libya and at one point Egypt, and nowadays it seems to be more Islamist, you know, in control of the region. Algeria was a revolutionary government also back in the day when there was Nasser and Gaddafi. There was also a revolutionary government in Algeria, and I think they were one of the earlier people, along with Tito and Nasser, were in that pact. Was the Algerian leader. Then, you know, now we're looking at the more pieces of the puzzle. You start going a little bit further south. You know, it's kind of those countries don't seem to have as much role in the whole middle. It's not even really the Middle East anymore. You know, but it's still the Islam. It's where the Islamic world starts to become the African Christian world, or you know, what we think of Africa. Really, North Africa is not what you think of when you think of Africa. You know, you think more of the Congo. You think of countries like Zambia. You know, countries are further south. Now there's Somalia. You know, it's funny. Somalia was brought up by Dylan. You know, they were invaded by the United States forces in the 90s, and you know, ever since practically that intervention, the intervention did nothing to stabilize the country. And it's been practically a state of endless civil war, and it's had one of the lowest standards of living ever since. For sure that Islamists, like in North Africa, are in Somalia, and like in North Africa, they cause havoc. You know, and there used to be a stable government in Somalia. For many years, there was maybe not the best government, but come on, anything was really a step up from what we have now in Somalia. There was a socialist government there at that time, and ever since they fell in '91, along with many leaders fell in '91. When that guy fell, then Somalia started to fall apart. You know, it seemed like it was just a year where there was a lot of. It was, you know, '91 was a very important year for politics around the world. And, you know, ever since that, Somalia, which is a pretty large country, fell apart. And also another thing about Somalia, they have natural resources. If they had a leader that could bring their country to its fullest potential, it is a pretty large country. Right by Saudi Arabia, it's another country that can corner in Saudi Arabia. And there's also Saudi Arabia is like a pocket there's like a pocket on that Saudi peninsula. The Saudi peninsula has not only Saudi Arabia, but that's pro-American. But you have the United Arab Emirates. You have Kuwait, I think is on that, is further north, I think, and then you have I think Bahrain is in there. Don't get don't blame me too much if I don't know all the geography of the region, because these are all pretty small countries on there. But what I'm saying is that peninsula, if that peninsula, like I said, if Libya and really Yemen are only two pieces that need to be, Yemen gets stabilized, and Libya, the Qaddafi's take over. The Qaddafi's take over Libya. Along with that, we have, the Middle East becomes a lot more brighter, because then the Saudis are on the defensive, and it seemed like for a long time, and the Saudis and the Israelis who work together on the defensive, and those two countries have caused a lot of problems, and they've made more allies. But if they start to lose, they will lose one of their main allies, Yemen, completely, and where it's no longer disputed. And once that country's no longer disputed, and they lose their allies there, and in Libya, which they're looks like have attempted to try to make an ally there. Once that happens, the tide turns. The tide turning that the anti-New World Order countries in the Middle East will become more prominent than the ones that are on the banker side. And the ones on the banker side would just be little tiny specks, frankly. The United Arab Emirates, which is a country that there's cities bigger than that. It's not much. It's not. It might be a little bit of exaggeration what I said, but it's not much of an exaggeration. Exaggerate a little bit, but it's one of the smaller countries around, and they're one of the biggest. That's one of the Saudis and Israelis' biggest allies there. And then there's of course there's Bahrain. That's one of the big movements that you don't hear about. There's a giant protest happening at the same time that these stage protests were happening in Libya and Syria in 2011, and they've continued. The Shias have been repressed in Bahrain for a long time by the Bahraini monarchy, but they are pro-American, the Bahraini monarchy, so they don't hear any mention of it. In fact, the Bahraini monarchy pays CNN. As one example of how our foreign media works. Our media works towards foreign governments, and just towards special interests in general. Our government and other special interests work the same way with our media. And CNN has this partnership, practically, this partnership line. They get paid. Well, they actually, all they do is not talk about it. And they don't talk about it, and you don't hear anything about what's going on there. Yet there's been serious acts of repression. Scenes of people being repressed in the streets by their Bahraini monarch. A little update about what's going on in the studio. We are 13 minutes into the situation. It is now 10:30, and I don't have any word from Dylan. I might have step away and see what's going on. I guess it could still be a computer freeze that happened. It seems like Skype and computers don't mix together too well. I guess that's one thing having good about having this tablet, yet I can't conference call is the only problem. I'm going to talk with CP Libre here for a second. I think he's on the kind of like timed out. I'm going to test this, and I'm going to have let's see. We might go on to dead air for a few minutes, so bear with me. At least we'll have CP Libre back. Here in a minute. I don't know. It's nothing really, because I still am putting in a lot of information here. We're still got 30 more minutes. I mean, I knew this Middle East show would actually end up like this. This Middle East show would have me actually. There was no way I was going to run out of information to talk about. If anything, I'm going to feel bad that I wasn't able to be able to talk more about this. I mean, I don't think I'm part. our part 2 for this Middle East show is practically every other show where we mention Middle East issues. Seems like at some point during the show it's mentioned. Okay. Okay, so CP Libre is about to conference me into a call with UCY, and then we're going to be back on the air. Both of us are going to be back on air. I'm back on air right now, and we're going to be and then we'll just be me and him, I guess, for the rest of the show possibly. But then at that point, we'll be able to have callers, I think. So maybe we could get a conversation going. And so when it comes to some, what's going on in Syria right now, and this is just, I really think, again, I'm making the prediction right now that well, I already made my prediction about Syria, but it's going to be in the next few weeks, we're going to see a sign that's going to tell us that we are heading towards a big escalation. What I mean by that is that it's going to go. It might never actually be a war declared, but there's going to be. This is what I predict. The first big move is going to be. There's going to be just nonstop airstrikes against the Syrian government. 20,000 troops plus sent against them. The Iranians already have 15,000 there. So what does that mean? That means the United States troops is going to be probably directly fighting Iranian forces at the same time. When they fight the Syrian forces, that's automatically going to draw Iran into the war. So that means that this is going to blow up into a Syria, Iran, United States, Israel probably into a massive war. And the Syrians and Iranians, I think they could prevail. I'm optimistic in such a scenario. I don't think the Russians. My prediction is the Russians they're not gonna go in too deep because they know that's how ugly that scenario becomes with the United States and Russia direct. United States and Russia direct combat. Anyways, we got an update from CP Libre here in the studio. We're gonna go off the air for a minute, and I'm gonna be back I'm gonna be back about a minute after, but I'm gonna stay on the air right now for about a minute or two. We're try to bring CP Libre in. So we got about. Yeah, we only have 20-something minutes. 20-something minutes. Jeez, that time flies talking about this stuff. I mean, I guess it's fun getting the information out, yes, but it's tragic at the same time because you think about what this all means. People have to suffer daily in Yemen, Saudis invading their country, and they just a complete blackout on Western media. Western media won't talk about it. They just act like it's not happening. Okay, so we are done with that. CP Libre might be back in a second. Back to what we were talking about. Now let's go to another topic. Why do I haven't breezed through yet? Turkey. What happened to all this? Remember all that? There was a bunch of Turkish anti-fascists protesting against Erdogan. Erdogan's a fucking joke. I mean, this guy pretends to be anti-Zionist, and is one of Israel's biggest traitors. And not traitor as in he was working with them and then backed off. I mean, Israel's a traitor to humankind anyways. But no, by Israel's biggest traitors. As they trade a bunch with them. A bunch of products are going between Turkey and Israel. And the Turkish, they pretend, they pretend to be pro-Palestinian. They pretend to be anti-Zionist. But it's all charade. And that's how Erdogan tries to keep any bit of credibility. And Erdogan also tries to act like the sultans of the history before the Ottoman Empire's collapse. And what I mean by that is that, the Ottoman Empire... Okay, we're back on air, and we seem to have had I don't know, there seem to be some technical problems. We can't conference in. Like when CP Libre tried to call us back in, the wouldn't let us. I don't know what happened to Dylan earlier. He's still a mystery. He's MIA. We've got 18 minutes left of the show, and now let's go back to we'll just talk about Erdogan, the clown. I just like talking about him because he's one of those people that is also behind the anti-Assad movement in the Middle East. The anti-Assad movement are the people that are all like, "Oh, Assad must go." And he's a big staunch supporter of the Syrian rebels. He's a pretty big supporter of ISIS, as we can tell, because he has a freaking consulate in Turkey. There's ISIS merchandise being sold in Ankara, the capital of Turkey, and they have the freaking consulate there. And what does even an ISIS consulate work? I mean, you get to go to the territories that ISIS run, kind of. Yeah, you get that's how they, it's like an arrangement. It's kind of like a military control center or something. You get like you go there, and they send you to whatever places if you're interested in being a total douchebag. and joined the United States supported proxy of ISIS. And you go to Iraq or Syria, or I guess somewhere else too, but Iraq and Syria are the two main. Iraq and Syria, that's where the fighting's happening. The majority of the fighting is happening. Turkey's bombed the Kurds, not ISIS. The Kurds that they've been bombing. They invaded practically Syria, while into Western Kurdistan is what the aspiring country would be. But let's also remember that whatever little differences that Western Kurdistan and the Syrian government have between each other have been resolved temporarily, at least, in the name of fighting against these Western-backed proxies. These Western-backed proxies being the ISIS and other Syrian terrorists in the country. And I think eventually, if the war actually does come to an end, I think eventually there might be official negotiations. There's no way that there's going to be peace talks between the Syrian opposition and Assad. Peace talks between them are impossible. But peace talks between the Kurds and the Syrian government are very likely. And I think that some land of Syria might get ceded away towards a Kurdish state. I don't think that would be necessary. Maybe there might just become an autonomous region or something like that. I think it might already be. Considering that they would have to be pretty grateful about, and they have an alliance together. I mean, they realize that the Assad government helps them out. Not only Turkey, there are Kurds, I think, on the other side of that border. They're heavily repressed. ISIS is coming right across that border from Turkey into Syria, and they were surrounding Kobani. But in the Battle of Kobani, one of the biggest wars of the Syrian civil war, and so when people look back, because that was right after the U.S. intervention, it might be remembered, the Battle of Kobani, as the first major battle of World War III, because it happened right about the time the United States started intervening. It was actually a little bit before, and the battle went for months. It was a terrible battle. The whole city of Kobani was involved, which is a city in western Kurdistan or northern Syria, whether you recognize the state or not. I think again, like I said, that the peace talks, once it happens, it probably will just become an autonomous region. And I think that the Kurdish leaders are will be reasonable in the long run and realize that the Assad government is the least of their worries, and they probably should try to remain part of a unified Syria, especially if this whole mess actually comes to an end. I don't think they need their own independent state, and I think they can just become an autonomous area that has freedom within Syria. It's not like East Ukraine. East Ukraine, they need their own independent state. This whole autonomous region bullshit there is not going to work, because these people in West Ukraine want to kill these East Ukrainians, the East Ukrainian residents. There's not going to be such thing as a autonomous East Ukraine inside of a fascist West Ukrainian state, or Ukrainian state, or whatever, because Ukraine would actually still be whole. It's going to eventually become, they've already called them West and East Ukraine. It's eventually going to become West and East Ukraine legitimately, because I think the East Ukrainians are going to push until they at least get that. I think they should push all the way to Kiev and throw those bastards out of the government that have taken over illegally in Ukraine. They have made they made, I think, an autonomous region, the West Ukraine, or that was their offer, but that thing is stupid. That thing is a terrible compromise, and the East Ukrainians need to keep fighting. So again, let me go back. I don't even think we're gonna have time for a caller by the time I just want to have CP Libre here for the last few minutes. I'm gonna contact Jules here, and just bear with me for a sec while I text her. We were on fire there on 10:20. It's actually a little bit short. I had it was actually 30 minutes ago. Wow, but it seemed like that point between 9:40, 9:30, and 10:15. We just all of us were. It was I think it was our first show where you could really feel, it felt like a team. It really felt like and we were on fire there. I don't know. It's like the old adage of the people in the conspiracy radio movement that whenever our show starts to have technical difficulties that haven't really been explained, we're like, oh shit, the NSA did something to us. I think I've had a show sabotaged because I was on fire one time. Me and Ava, who was a promoter of Stable Radio, and we were on fire together, and then just all went and made a bunch of weird noises. It's like I think there is sabotage that happens sometimes, especially. But it's like they're stopping from preventing from listening to my show back then. There was, I have to admit, there wasn't that many people listening back then. Nowadays, there's a lot more listening. There's probably 100 of you out there. I don't know. I'm not going to. I'm just going to say I don't know because that's actually should be kind of kept confidential. You can figure that out if you really want to. I don't need to put it out there on the airwaves. Throat's starting to get a little bit sore. Shit. Some good thing this is an FC. I would like somebody to on one of my shows count up because this is a show where I'm going naturally. I'm going to swear about 10 times a show. That's what I think. I would like to see how many times I swear. I swore about 4 times where I was going on fire right there. I'm just saying it's like hot sauce or something. It's better with it, but don't put too much, or you're just gonna lose the whole taste of the show, of the dish that we're making, this dish of truth that we're putting out there. I mean, I don't know. Some people like a certain somebody, and that being that revolutionary that has brought some kind of controversy to the show. What I mean by that is Trotsky. Apparently Trotsky wrote something about it against swearing. I'm like, I disregarded that because I don't see how swearing is anti-revolutionary whatsoever. In fact, if you talk to most revolutionary people, they swear more than regular people. I mean, it seems like it. I think it's just a stupid construct that people are more worried about profane words than serious shit. And there I go again. That's one vessel. I knew that was going to happen as I was going to say it, but I didn't. I was like, serious stuff didn't even register. It was like serious, didn't even say serious crap didn't even register in mine. It was just serious shit was the first thing that come through my head. By wars and coups and that kind of stuff. People are not offended by all that kind of stuff, but they'll be offended by the use of a swear word. Okay, we got a little update here, and we'll see if I can try to fix that. Try to fix our little studio situation. Have CP Libre on for the last few minutes of the show. We can get one more topic. I think we can squeeze it out, can we? One more Middle East topic. Okay, let's see. Look, how about we talk about? Can we? I don't. I wish there was more like a podcast. Sometimes because if it was a podcast, I would have all kinds of cool stuff added to it. Like I don't know, just have a big wheel with a bunch of random topics and start spinning it. One of them it's just a loss for whatever topic we're gonna have. I don't know. It'd start to be kind of like become like a game show, wouldn't it? Spin that wheel all the way around. Let's see if we can get $1. I don't know. So just bear with my randomness sometimes. When you're talking about serious shit, you gotta. I know it's almost a little bit morbid, to kind of start the laugh 2 seconds after you talk about war. But it would be too depressing if there wasn't some comedy. I know it's bad sometimes, but it seems like we're going from talking about horrible stuff like in Libya, and then 2 seconds later we're laughing about 21 Jump Street or something like that. Well, I'm just saying, if there was no comedy on this show, gosh, it'd be a little bit rougher to do. I think the listeners like because we get the good points, and we know we're not laughing at these other. That's okay, so I got an explanation about the situation that's the situation that's going on in the studio, and I don't think we're going to be able to get CP Leroy back on according to this. It's a situation, just a UC1 and somebody else. Well, and I was the situation is though that it looks like Dylan was in charge of, or Dylan had the phones wired to him. He couldn't, there was nobody else could call in, or nobody else could take over the phones. Okay, so. I guess at this point we're just trying to get him on for a couple minutes just to say sign off practically, just so because it would be a little bit victory when you have these technical difficulties, even though the actual result might be minor. What we might actually be able to achieve by having somebody on for a few minutes is worth it because we got a minor victory. Technology didn't win today. If we could do that, it didn't win for the last 45 freaking minutes. It was 45 minutes if this holds up. Since we had our problems, but again, I got quite a bit of stuff out there, and here I'm going to mention something that in the Middle East, you have these people that pretend to be pro-Palestinian, but they're not, and I notice it's used as a cause a lot, but there's only really two or stable pro-Palestinian countries in the Middle East, that's Syria and Iran. Syria and Iran are pro-Palestinian legitimately. There's actually a lot of Palestinians fighting in Syria along with Assad. They're not just being used. They legitimately support Assad. There's in Palestine, there's even groups in Palestine that I think are contradictory to the true Palestinian cause of statehood. For example, I think that the Fatah is not really exactly, they just let them continue to be occupied. Mahmoud Abbas is nobody, or Mahmoud Abbas is not a real leader practically because of the fact that he's not ruling over any land. It's all occupied. So I don't know exactly. I think that the Palestinian situation needs to be fixed by the PFLP coming to power, and that's the leftist-leaning, it's almost like the Nasser's movement, and that would be nice. A true Nasser's government coming in Egypt, Libya, going back to the pro-Qaddafiists. They went back to the pro-Qaddafiists, and then had the PFLP in charge of Palestine. I don't think Hamas is a good option. I think that the PFLP is the truest. It's the truest alternative to Fatah. That's actually of any power and any legitimate cause that could actually take over the Palestinians' land if they, and could actually make a Palestinian state and fight. They believe in one state. They believe that's all their land, and as it is true, and that the Israelis, they're the invaders. It's not their land. They don't need to negotiate a two-state solution with them. It's all their land. It's a one Palestinian state needs to exist. I think again. Let me also reiterate. I'm not, but when I met Hamas is not a good option. I just don't know about the legitimacy about they're not doesn't seem to be doing a lot for the Palestinian cause, and their intentions. I don't know. I hear that because their connections to the Muslim Brotherhood are a little bit alarming. And I hear they're not. It seems like their supporters don't seem to be the most pro-Assad. One of the few governments that actually supports them, they're against. Hamas, also doesn't seem to be. They seem to be their own little movement. They're not with the rest of the Middle East resistance. The PFLP is, and that's why I support. That's why I support the PFLP. I think the PFLP could become the best Palestinian leadership. Anyways, we're in the last minute of the show here, so I'm going to thank everyone that listened to UCY Radio tonight and listened to Voice of Rebellion Radio. This is a great show. Everybody listen to UCY and Voice of Rebellion tonight. Even though and CP Libre, sorry about I couldn't get back on the show, man. Dylan was pretty good. You did well this show, and I think everybody talked a lot more. I talked less this time. That's good. I talked a lot too much in the first two shows of the whole 3-man crew. But now I think we worked more like a team while we're having it, man. That's why the technical
Point of no return and nobody could stop it. Malcolm Little when he knelt before Elijah Muhammad, the comet that killed the dinosaurs, changing the earth. They love to criticize, they always say I changed for the worse. Like prescription pills when you misusing them, nigga. The Templar Knights when they took Jerusalem, nigga, and figured out what was buried under Solomon's temple, Al-Aqsa. The name is not coincidental. I know too much, the government is trying to murder me. No coming back like cutting your wrist open vertically. How could the serpent be purposely put in charge of the country? Genetic engineered sickness spread amongst me. My people are so hungry that they attack without reason, like a fucking dog ripping off the hand that feeds him. Immortal technique is treason to the Patriot Act. So come and get me, motherfucker, cause I'm not coming back. This is the point from which I can never return, and if